we've got another guest that has done some research onto this deal of the navigators, the people who kind of work you through this thing, this Rubik's Cube of healthcare that Obama has foisted off on the country. His name is Ben Johnson. He joins us from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Mark. So good to be with you.
It is our pleasure to have you here, sir. What kind of horror stories have you uncovered here? You're kind of poking your finger in the eye of the Obama people on this navigator issue. What are you finding? We know that Planned Parenthood was given the role as one of the navigators.
Right. There are a total of 105 different organizations. $67 million in federal funds have gone out through grants to hire people to be navigators. A navigator is someone who is supposed to navigate the way through the ObamaCare law. The law is tens of thousands of pages. Nobody read it, including the people who passed it and voted on it, didn't read it. But they're supposed to hire these people who will be experts in the law, and they will help you find the best policy under Obamacare for you. Now, there isn't one for us because it covers abortifacients, covers the morning after pill, RU486, so there is no perfect plan for us. But leaving that aside, these navigators are supposed to help you find the best plan for you given your circumstances. To know that, they have to know what your circumstances are. So they will have access to the Federal Data Hub. The Federal Data Hub has the Social Security number, banking information, and health records of every single American. It has records from 8 different federal agencies, the HHS, IRS, Social Security Administration, Department of Homeland Security, which thinks that all of us are domestic terrorists, and several other organizations as well. All of those records have been digitized, uploaded, and every Obamacare navigator has access to the entire Federal Data Hub. Now, Planned Parenthood has received grants totaling $655,000 in order to assist people, to help them go forward and enroll in Obamacare. The obvious question would be, can we trust Planned Parenthood with this information? Can we trust the people that they hire with this information? Senator John Cornyn put the question directly to Kathleen Sebelius on November 12th in the Senate. He had about 4.5 minutes of questions. She refused to answer any of them, yes or no, except for the last one. He said, is it possible that these navigators could be convicts? Is it possible they could be convicted felons? And she said, yes. In fact, there is nothing in the guidelines to say that the person who has access to all of this and is supposedly helping you find your way through the healthcare maze wasn't convicted of identity theft. There are no guidelines whatsoever. All of those things she testified under oath have been outsourced to the organizations that do the hiring. They are the ones who are supposed to hire and make sure that people are up to speed, but there is no requirement that they don't hire felons to do this. And theoretically, these people have access to the Federal Data Hub, meaning they might have John Smith come in the morning, and they might have Jane Smith come in between, but it's tempting to think that they might be interested in looking up Mark Crutcher's information and Father Frank Pavone's information in between. So there is no guarantee that Planned Parenthood isn't going to hire disreputable people to be involved in this. And in fact, we found that James O'Keefe, who has a history of pro-life activism, has already found they encourage people who apply to lie and to circumvent the law. Basically, the navigators are President Obama's way of saying, if you like your privacy, you can keep your privacy.
Right. It's almost mind-boggling when you think about the potential here. And I'll tell you something. We talked about this here on Life Talk a couple of years ago. When I first heard that the people who were going to implement Obamacare were going to be the IRS, and now they've hired tens of thousands of new agents. Do we really think that it's a good idea for the Internal Revenue Service to have access to all of our medical records? That's a good idea, and then these same people have the ability to seize your bank account or to put a stop on your bank account or whatever. Is that such a good plan?
Well, we've seen that not only do they have that power and that access, but during certain administrations, they are highly politicized to such a degree. The Obama administration is amazing. There are these low-level operatives everywhere who somehow do harass the opponents of the Obama administration, completely unbeknownst to the administration itself. There are low-level operatives in Cincinnati who happen to harass organizations who are pro-life. look into their records and demand to know the content of their prayers before they'll give them 501c3 status. So these are the people who are now going to implement Obamacare. And again, they're the ones who are going to have access to this vast pile of personal, highly personal data, all of which has been digitized. Obama made it, one of the key components of Obamacare was that medical records would be digitized and computerized. So instead of having paper records, they would be online and accessible. And in fact, he threatened to withhold federal dollars from doctors who participate in Medicare if they didn't digitize their records. So he's had all these digitized. Now, in itself, there's the threat of the navigators looking into this and doing so improperly. There are certain problems with this which have been pointed out. It's so bad that people in the states don't want this problem in the states. 14 different state attorneys general wrote a letter to Kathleen Sebelius back in August pointing all these problems out. They said that there is no clear record of what it means if they do breach your privacy, because it's not defined what privacy rights you have, and therefore what would constitute a breach of those rights. If those rights are breached, it's not clear who's held accountable. It's not clear if it's the individual, if it's the organization that did the hiring, or if it's the exchange itself. So it's an ill-defined law, and it is begging for abuse, and I think we're already beginning to see it.
Well, it was a fraud. It was a fraud from day one. And it's like Obama's now coming out here saying, well, you can keep your plan. If you like your plan, you can keep it. I meant if it was a good plan, you could keep it. If it was a plan that I approved, you could keep it. Well, he was lying from day one, obviously. And it would be like saying if you go to a car dealership and the salesman says, hey, this car gets 50 miles per gallon. And so you buy it and it gets 25 or 30. And you come back to him and he says, you told me you told me this car get 50 miles per gallon. Well, it will if you drive it 12 miles an hour, 24 hours a day. You never exceed 12 miles an hour. It will get 50 miles per gallon. And if you run the tires up to 80, well, 80 pounds. You never said any of that when I bought the car. You'd have a malpractice, you'd have a fraud suit against him. The guy could probably wind up going to jail if you could show that this was a pattern of behavior for this car company. But
people have said time and again, if the Obama administration and its practices were engaged in by a CEO of a company, he'd be behind bars tomorrow.
Absolutely.
All of this is completely unethical, completely immoral. And to build on your privacy point, don't forget that when people sign up for healthcare programs through these exchanges, the programs are forbidden by law, by the Affordable Care Act itself, from disclosing what is in that policy. People only know that it covers everything that Obamacare requires, but you don't know if it covers abortion or not. It is not specified, and they're not even allowed by law to tell you if it does or not until the time that you sign up.
Well, you can be pretty certain that if they don't say it doesn't cover abortion, it covers abortion. You can bet on that.
Yes, well, and in some areas, according to Congressman Chris Smith, who's got a bill pending that's trying to force disclosure of this, so people have the option to follow their conscience in these matters. Congressman Chris Smith's office did some calling around. In some areas, there are 0 plans that do not cover abortion. It is simply impossible to be part of the federal health care law, comply with the law, and follow the dictates of a higher law. It is impossible to do so under the way the system has been rigged. So, and it would be the equivalent of saying, what is in this car that I want to buy? I can't tell you.
Right.
Is it a V6, V8? I can't tell you.
Can't tell you that.
It's a good car. Buy it.
Just sign me a blank check and leave, and you get what you get.
Yeah.
That's basically what's happening. Hey, Ben, thanks for all the research you've done. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your coming on and letting us know this stuff. These are truly frightening times that we live in. And this situation with Obamacare, I don't think people truly realize how pervasive this thing is and what the potential risks are for this, for the whole country, not just for healthcare, for everything.
Just like the abortion industry itself, it works under cover of darkness. They want to hide, distort, lie, cover up, deceive, withhold, secrecy, darkness. And this is what the Obama administration is making itself out to be. Yeah.
First person that comes to mind is Elaine Riddick. I think we're going to be hearing a lot more stories kind of like hers where people are going to be manipulated and coerced into doing things that they have.
She was the lady in Alpha 21 who was sterilized without her knowledge. Mm-hmm. She didn't even know it till years later when she tried to get pregnant. And you're right. I mean, again, I just don't understand if you're going to say we're going to if we're going to have this thing, we're going to have it overseen by a government agency. Why would you pick the IRS? Somebody needs to be asking that question. Who sat in a room somewhere and said, this is the government agency we're going to charge with the responsibility of implementing this overhaul of healthcare is the IRS? Who came up with this idea? And I think part of it is it's intimidation. There's probably not any agency of the government that intimidates people more than the IRS. So if you have a problem with Obamacare and all of a sudden IRS agents are knocking on your door who you know can audit all your taxes going back for the last 20 years, right? That's an intimidating factor.
Or, I mean, the fact that they can access your bank account and your livelihood, that's definitely a lot to intimidate anybody.
Well, and if you have an agency there that has the ability to access your bank account and all your financial records and all your medical records, what else do they need to know about you?
Right.
And the government has already, if you're in the case of a pro-lifer, they've already deemed you a terrorist organization. I mean, what else do they need to know? Anyway, thanks for being with us, Ben.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you, sir.